Okie doke. So, just give myself a pause just so that it's one of those, when I come to edit, it's kind of, I ask these questions too quickly. And it's like, why didn't you pause? Right.
Yeah.
Hello, and welcome to the Outpost Frequencies, brought to you by the lastmovieoutpost.com for all of your movie news, reviews, and everything cool about film. This is an extra Outpost Frequencies today because we have a very special guest with us, Amber Doig-Thorne. Hello, Amber.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Really not a problem. Thank you for joining us. Like I say, it's a real pleasure to talk to you. Now, you may not know Amber's name just at the moment. However, you will very soon because she's going to be in one of, I want to say, kind of the biggest controversial movie that's come out for the last few years.
Yeah, that is a fair statement.
Yeah, which is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Mm-hmm. Now, for people that may not have heard about this, who are living obviously in a rock somewhere in the middle of nowhere, how would you describe Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey?
So Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is a horror retelling of a childhood classic. It follows Pooh and Piglet. They've grown up with Christopher Robin. He's kind of looked after them whilst he was a child, fed them, raised them. And then he decides to go off to university to study to become a doctor, leaving Pooh and Piglet by themselves. And they don't really know how to fend for themselves. So they become basically serial killers. And they go on a murderous rampage. And that's where the film starts. I know, it's wild.
With it, though, when I first heard about it, immediately I was kind of, this sounds particularly interesting. As somebody kind of with a lot of films these days, there's a few franchises which are sort of churned out, and even Disney themselves have kind of done Winnie the Pooh several times before, but this is a brand new take. Now, how is it you're allowed to do this with Winnie the Pooh?
So the scenario with this film is that Winnie the Pooh, the original book by A.A. Milne, came into the public domain in January 2022. So because it was in the public domain, that means that technically it's a free IP. So anyone can use those characters however they'd like. But the Winnie the Pooh from Disney is still copyrighted. So for example, if you want to show Pooh in a film, you can't do the classic red top, no pants, which I don't think anyone would want to see anyway. You can't see don't bother. So you have to be careful. But because the version from the books was in the public domain, that's what this film company did. They thought, right, let's kind of capitalize on this IP being out there. And they were the first production company in the world to make a film about Pooh. And it just happened to be a horror film, which, like you said, hasn't been done before. It's such a unique idea. And I think that's why it's got such a crazy reception worldwide.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's two sides to that story, because on the one hand, Pooh is a beloved character that we all know and love. And then on the other hand, he's now become a serial killer. What did you first think when you read the script?
So I was a really big fan of Winnie the Pooh growing up. I had all of the toys, I had the games, I watched the films. And Winnie the Pooh was a really big part of my childhood. But I'm one of those people where I think it's really nice if something that you've enjoyed in your childhood can kind of be retold in a different setting. So then it's kind of suitable for you as an adult. And I love horror films. So as soon as I saw the casting call online, I was like, this is awesome. I think finding a film nowadays is actually a unique concept is so difficult because everything is a sequel or a prequel or a franchise or a remake. And I was like, this is a really cool, unique idea. I love horror films and I love Winnie the Pooh. So this is like a merch.
It's peanut butter and jam put together.
Exactly. It's like it's been sewn together with honey.
Oh, yeah. Except for, please, anybody out there, do not eat blood and honey. It's not a good sandwich combination. So you play Alice in the movie. Tell us about Alice's story.
So Alice was a really fun character to play. I feel like she goes on quite a journey throughout the film. I'd say in the film, there's two characters that probably have the biggest character development, and that's Alice and Christopher Robin. And for Alice, at the beginning of the film, she's struggling a bit because she's in a new relationship with her girlfriend, and Alice is out of the closet. She's very comfortable with her sexuality, but her girlfriend, this is the first kind of lesbian relationship that she's been in. So she's struggling a little bit. I think she's still finding herself, and Alice is trying to basically help her figure out who she is. So at the beginning of the film, we see this really beautiful scene between the two of them where Alice has prepared something really nice in this bedroom in the cabin where they're going to in the woods. And she's put rose petals everywhere and she's really trying to make an effort. And her girlfriend Zoe just isn't really having it. And in the trailer, we see Piglet kill Alice's girlfriend Zoe in the pool with a sledgehammer, which is brutal. And after that point, Alice kind of has this change, which is completely understandable because I would be the same. If someone like if Piglet killed my boyfriend, I
Yeah.
need to avenge that.
Yeah.
So Alice basically she set out on revenge on Piglet. And one of the reasons that I was so honored to play this character is one, I think representation is really important. And I think in horror films particularly, a lot of filmmakers fall into this trap where if there is an LGBT character, they have to make that kind of their defining feature. And in this film, it's just something that's a part of the character, it's not really highlighted, it's not really shouted about, but it's just there. And I think that's really authentic and really important. And I also love that Alice is kind of the only human character to successfully take on Pooh or Piglet. I don't want to give too much away, but there's a really cool standoff scene that I have with Piglet, and it was my favorite scene to film. It was very, very cool.
I love the fact that I love the statement of taking revenge on Piglet, because you can't think of anything more innocent than Piglet in kind of all of literary history. But obviously, you've got a good reason to go after her for killing your girlfriend.
Well, I think no matter how sweet the character is, if they kill your girlfriend, you're gonna have to go after them. You've got to revenge that death.
Yeah, totally. But like I say, it's just kind of one of those things that I never thought I'd hear.
Well, I certainly never thought that I would say that as an actor. Imagine how I feel.
Now, with it, was the film, is it a lot of practical effects or is there much CG in there?
So I've seen a lot of reviews recently where people have been saying it's loads of CGI. And I'm thinking, I was on set and I can confirm there's not that much CGI. There was so many practical effects, and the special effects makeup artists were wonderful. They were so fantastic at their job. And don't get me wrong, there is a little bit of CGI in the film. So there's some really cool parts. So Pooh kind of has the power to control bees. And obviously we didn't have controllable bees on set, so that was obviously CG.
Yeah, they're still off with them. Exactly. Technology's good, but not that good. Yeah.
Maybe for the sequel we can train some up. We'll see. So that was CG, and then there's a couple of deaths where there's one where like an eyeball pops out, which obviously I'm pretty sure equity wouldn't allow that. So obviously that's CG. And then someone gets run over by a car, again, CG. And there's a teeny tiny bit of CG blood when the Zoe character gets hit in the pool with a sledgehammer. But the majority of it, I'd say maybe 80 to 85% is practical effects, fake blood, and just really good like prosthetics and special effects makeup.
Excellent. So what was it like then meeting Pooh for the first time?
So it was weird. It was weird because when I read the script, I still found it kind of funny. Like this whole concept of, okay, I'm going to be like chased by one of my childhood heroes.
And you're still thinking of the cartoon character in the little red t-shirt and
exactly, and no pants. And I was like, oh god, I really hope they make him wear pants. And but it was weird because I always imagined Pooh as this like teeny tiny cuddly toy, right? And when I first saw, so Craig David Dowsett plays Pooh, and he was really fantastic. And the first time I saw him in costume, it was genuinely scary because we always know Pooh as being this teeny tiny bear, and all of a sudden you're looking at this 6-foot powerhouse of a man in this terrifying mask covered in blood and like with a big belly on him, and I'm looking at him thinking, Jesus, I don't need to act, I'm actually scared. And offset, it was great because I think the costume wasn't the easiest thing to get into, so Craig would tend to stay in his costume when we in between takes, basically, same as Chris Cordell, who plays Piglet. And it was really funny because when we weren't filming, both of them, they're just the loveliest chaps, and they were like joking, and Craig was like flossing doing that Fortnite dance, and I was like, this is so weird.
So did you sit down and like have lunch with him while he's dressed up and that kind of thing?
Still in costume, so we'd go from Pooh like trying to murder us, and it was genuinely terrifying because Craig just has such a big presence because he is like a big guy, and then they'd be like, cut, and then we just sit and have like sandwiches and snacks, and he'd be there in his Pooh mask, and I'm just like, it's so strange.
So somebody get Pooh a pot of honey. Yeah, honey. Yeah.
I was saying to him, like, you have to eat some honey at some point. I'm going to be very disappointed if you don't.
I mean, with it, like I say, the Pooh that we all know and love, like I say, is from the Disney cartoons and from the books of, like I say, that sweet little character. Do you then feel, what's the word, any remorse that you're now turning him into this horror character that's going to traumatize children as opposed to bring love and comfort to them?
Well, personally, I didn't do anything. It's the filmmakers that did. So I'm
all right, fair enough.
Alice is just a victim in the process. To be honest, I personally thought it was a really cool idea, and I don't really have any negative thoughts associated with it because, like I said, I think it's really cool. I loved Pooh as a child, and now the Pooh story has been retold so that I can fall in love with Pooh again as an adult. Granted,
Mm,
in a horror film as a
yeah.
crazy serial killer, but I just think it's really nice because Pooh's always been aimed towards children and those of a younger generation. But putting him in a horror film setting, I think it's opening up the character to this whole new audience who might not have been interested to him before. So obviously,
Mm.
I've seen like some people saying, "Oh, yes, you're ruining our childhood," and I'm thinking, well, at the end of the day, if that's what you think, just don't watch the film. You
Yeah.
know, film's
Yeah.
subjective. Not everyone's gonna like it. That's completely fine. That's just the nature of the beast. But at the end of the day, like we've had such an amazing positive response from horror fans who've loved it. And I get so many messages every day from people being like, this is so cool. Like I didn't know what to expect. And either I'd never heard of Pooh or I'd never seen the Pooh films or the opposite. Like me, people being like, oh, I was a really big fan of Pooh as a kid and I never thought I'd kind of like be so invested in the character as an adult. So thank you for like bringing him back into my life. Someone said that, and I was like, "You're welcome."
I can imagine somebody who's never heard of Pooh before going back and watching the originals and going, "Where's all the killing?"
Yeah,
He's just,
literally being like, "Oh,
Eeyore's
good."
pretty slow. Get him, look.
I'd have to watch like 3 films, watching Christopher Robin film, being like, "There's no murders. This isn't right." I need to watch like a director's cut. What am I missing?
Yeah, yeah. Maybe Disney will now do a director's cut of
Yeah.
Christopher Robin. You know, where we kind of because of the popularity of this one.
I mean,
Um,
I would love to see that.
I mean, with it, it sounds like the movie was good fun to make. Is that right?
It is, yeah. I had a lot of fun on set, and it was one of those films where I felt like there was a really special vibe. And whilst we were filming it, I can certainly say this for myself. I had this feeling that it could be something really special and it could really go somewhere. And I've made a lot of independent horror films. I've had the privilege of being in about 25 British horror films now, I think, feature films. And this is one of the first ones where I had this weird feeling on set. And I was like, I feel like this could be the one that kind of gets into cinemas. And just because it's such a popular character and
Yeah,
yeah, I just had so much fun on set, and I was like, I think people will enjoy watching it as much as we enjoyed making it, hopefully, and
yeah.
that seems to be the reception. So yeah, it was really cool to be a part of.
It's been frustrating because I've not had chance to see it yet because I live in
Oh no.
Somerset and well no it's just I live in Somerset and so we've still got Gone with the Wind playing in a few of our cinemas because it's so old fashioned down here. But would you say it's a cinema experience that everybody can enjoy, or is it kind of like it's not? I like a good horror film, but I like a good horror film on my own in the dark with my headphones on to soak up the atmosphere, or is it kind of one of those horror films which you can sit with all your friends and like play the drinking game every time somebody gets killed kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you'd want to play that as a drinking game because I think you'd be pretty tipsy by the time you leave.
Didn't get to the end of Winnie the Pooh, no, yeah.
So you just wouldn't remember the ending. You'd remember the
All right.
first like 30 minutes and think it's a short film. Um, I personally think it's one of those films that you should see in the cinema because
Oh,
it it's just so much fun to watch. Like I watched it at the world premiere in Mexico, the European premiere in Amsterdam, and I'm seeing it again at the UK premiere at Fright Fest this Friday. And honestly, I'm really excited to see it. Like, obviously, I'm not biased at all, but I really enjoyed it. Like, it's really entertaining. And I think it's one of those things, and you'll understand when you see it. There's so many moments that get like an audible reaction from the
yeah.
audience, which a lot of films in America that's really common. But in England, people don't really react to films out
No,
loud.
no, not at all.
Exactly, and this is one of the first films that I've seen in a cinema in a while where people actually gave that reaction, and that just made me so happy, and I think because some of it is just so silly and some of it is so shocking and some of the deaths are so brutal, there's just so many moments where I feel like it really amplifies the movie-going experience if you're with other people. So I would personally say watch it in cinemas. It's not I wouldn't say it's necessarily, like, super scary, like, there's probably a
No.
couple of jump scares. I remember the first time I saw it, like, I jumped at one point, and I was like, "Why am I jumping? I was there when we filmed it. I know what's happening."
Yeah.
It still caught me off guard.
Oh man, it's like I say, I am busting to see it because I'm the same as you. That I'm quite bored with modern Hollywood. Like you say, it's sequels, prequels, and all this kind of stuff. So to get an original idea, but like I say, it's just none of my local cinemas were showing it. So it's going to be hopefully I will track it down in the cinema at some point in time. But if not, it's going to be on streaming. But I'm thoroughly looking forward to it. So I
Also
mean, you said that you've been in quite a few other independent films. Do you consider yourself a scream queen?
so I feel like this term is so controversial. I want to say Yes, in a sense, because I've been the final girl in a fair few films now, and
Right.
pretty much every horror film that I've been in, I have ended up screaming at some point. So technically, yes. But I feel like there is a bit of a stigma around people saying that. But to be honest, I think it's kind of cool, and I love watching horror films, and I love being in horror films. So I'm happy to be called a scream queen. This is fine.
That's fair enough. So, how did you initially get into acting? Sort of like from early on in your career.
Yeah, so I've been acting since I was a child. I did a lot of plays and musicals and pantomimes when I was at school. I'm also obsessed with comedy. I've previously been like commissioned as a comedy writer performer for BBC Three. I have a sketch that's on BBC iPlayer, and I write and produce my own comedy sketches online. So comedy is something that's really important to me. And I'd say I started professionally. I think it was 2018, so about 5 years ago now.
Okay.
And I've I'm one of those people where if I'm passionate about something, I throw like 100% of my energy in. So I think in 5 years, I've probably worked on about 100 productions, in total, about 30 feature films, a lot of like short films, comedy productions, web series, commercials, a bit of everything. Um, yeah, I've known since I was a child that acting is what I wanted to do. And it was just a case of waiting until I'd finished school and got all my qualifications. So then I can be like, okay, cool. I've got that to fall back on. Great. Now let me pursue my passion as a
Yeah.
responsible adult.
Basically, you just love the attention, is what you're saying.
Oh, of course, like every actor does. I just love playing make believe. I think it's really cool that you can escape for the day and just like
Mm,
take on someone else's character. And I feel like it's a wonderful form of escapism as well. Like when I was younger, I used to love reading because if you've had a difficult day, at the end of the day, if you just sit down with a book, it's so therapeutic and it just takes your
y-
mind off everything.
yeah,
And I
you
think
get lost.
especially exactly. And there's so many awful things going on in the world at the moment. I mean, COVID was horrific, like the war with Ukraine, there's just so much negativity. And for me, I find acting so cathartic because like I said, I can just forget about everything that's going on, forget about all of my worries, all
Mm.
of my problems, and become someone else. So to be honest, that's probably the main reason that I became an actor. But I think my long-term goal with acting is I just want to make films that people it's so corny, but I just want to make films that people enjoy. And like when I go to the cinema, like I saw the new Shazam film yesterday. I went to the premiere and there were moments when I was like crying and then I had goosebumps and then I was laughing. And I was like, I just love that like films can make people feel such a wide variety of emotions. I just think that's wonderful. It's so
Yeah.
cringy, but yeah.
No, but it's exactly right. I kind of, if you bring movies down into their basic forms, they're kind of either a piece of artwork which makes you think, or just a piece of entertainment. And
Exactly.
like I say, sometimes films are very important. Like for example, just off the top of my head, Schindler's List, is an
Yeah,
important film to watch, which is a piece of artwork. But then you've got Winnie the Pooh, which is just fun and entertainment, and it's I can't see it winning any Oscars, but people are going to go and see it and enjoy it and get bums on seats in the cinema, which is a great thing.
exactly. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there who may think it's a piece of artwork, but you never know. I just think
So
it's
I'm
a
sure
really
somebody somewhere is going to do like a thesis on it or something or other at some point in time.
oh my god, I would love that. Could you imagine someone doing like their final essay at university on Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey? I'd love that. I just think, it's such a fun film and it's really entertaining. And I think if you go into the film expecting to have a good laugh, see some
Yeah.
gory kills, and if you're a fan of like the 80s slasher films, you're going to absolutely love it. And that's the expectation that I went into the cinema. And honestly, hand on heart, I really enjoyed it. And there's not that many films I can watch again and again, but the fact that I'm going to see it for a third time and I'm genuinely looking
Well,
forward to it,
I was
like
going to say
anyone who knows me
you
will be like,
have to
yeah.
though.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I've been in films before that I choose not to watch. I think
Oh, okay.
everyone's been there, especially at the
No.
start of your career. So this is why I'm saying the fact I want to watch it 3 times.
How
And
come it took you an
actually,
hour and a half to buy a hot dog? Sorry, I got lost in the foyer.
to be fair, I do love my cinema snacks.
Now, the director, Rhys Frank Waterfield, has said that a couple of the other characters are coming into public domain, like Peter
Yeah.
Pan and also Bambi, because I've seen he wants to do Peter Pan, Neverland Nightmare, and
Yeah.
Bambi, The Reckoning.
Love that name.
Again, just sort of like, you do not associate those two. You wouldn't put them in a sentence ever. But obviously, Rhys has. Would you work with him again? I don't want to say is Alice going to be in them again because I don't want to know what happens to Alice. But would you work with him again if an opportunity came up?
So obviously, I can't say what happens to Alice. There is a sequel. I'm not going to say if Alice is going to be in it or not because it would
Okay.
spoil the film. I think the concept of turning these kind of really popular fictional characters into horror films is really cool. And there's so many characters that I think have potential. Like, I'm personally obsessed with the Brothers Grimm fairy tale. So characters like
Oh
Snow
yeah,
White, Rapunzel, Little Red Riding Hood, Big Bad Wolf. And I think it'd be really cool to see those characters in a spin-off. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that. Because I'm like fascinated by there's these comics called Fables by Bill Willingham and a subsequent game which I've been playing on the PlayStation recently, and I love it, called The Wolf Among Us. And it's kind of that concept of taking those characters, and it's kind of a horror spin. So it's set in like present day New York, and all of these fairy tale characters have been taken out of their magical land into real life. And it's very noir and quite dark. And there's a lot of like struggles that they're facing, but it's very realistic. And I remember reading the comics thinking, this is basically like kind of what we're doing with Winnie the Pooh. But I think if they just pushed it a little bit further and turned it into a horror, I'm like, there's already the comics there. So I think there's probably so many materials out there, which just with a teeny tiny push would be able to go into the horror territory. So yeah, no, I would certainly be up for being involved in more of these spin-offs. Like, there's just so many characters, there's so much potential.
It's kind of weird, actually, because, like you say, you mentioned the Brothers Grimm there, and I know the original fairy stories that they used to tell were actually quite gruesome. And then it's kind of weird how Disney turned them into sort of kids' movies that we kind of all know and love, which are all kind of sweet and everything else. But originally, like I say, they were pretty gruesome stuff, weren't they?
Exactly. So that's the thing why I think they would make such good horror stories, because they have a history. And like exactly as you said, like when they were written, they weren't these nice, like cuddly Disney characters.
Come on, kids, let's sit down and let's read a story before bed.
Literally, like, oh my goodness, I would never want to read that to my child before bed.
No.
But even if you think about it, though, like Bambi and The Lion King, like I remember seeing these films as a child and being like, asking my parents, why did Disney kill off like all of these characters' parents? Like, this is really sad and dark. And this is when my parents explained, well, some of these characters are based on Brothers Grimm, and it's actually quite dark. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense, because I was like, Disney's aimed at children. Why are they trying to make it depressing? But at the end of the day, I guess it makes it more realistic. But
one question I didn't have prepared, but I'm just going to ask you. But you say you love horror. What kind of movies did you grow up with, horror-wise?
So I love the Conjuring franchise. I think those films are just fantastic. The last one's probably my favorite, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. I love the Saw franchise. I remember my mum took me to take one of them. She took me to the cinema to see one of them when I was probably younger than I should.
Too young, yeah. my dad showed. I was going to say my dad showed me Alien when I was about 7, and I didn't sleep for a week. And my mum was furious, but my dad found it hilarious.
But I kind of had the same scenario with my mum, where she took me to see Saw, and I think it was an 18, and I wasn't 18 at the time, but they didn't check ID or anything, and we didn't really think about it. And then afterwards, I remember like talking to my friends at school, and they were like, are you not traumatized? Like, seeing all these body parts like torn off? And I don't know why, me and my mum just found it funny, because we were like, oh, this would never happen. Ha ha ha, look, there's like a leg flying around.
Which is part of the entertainment experience of a movie. Like I say, it's a movie, it's...
Exactly. And I think my dad, he kind of likes horror films, but my mum's always really enjoyed horror films. So whenever one comes out, we would always go to the cinema and watch it together, since I was literally at school. So I'd say that horror's always been a really big part of my life. And I'm just trying to think, aside from The Conjuring and Saw, Insidious obviously is a classic. Oh my goodness, I didn't sleep probably for like a year after watching that. That traumatized me. And like Paranormal Activity, the one type of horror film that really gets to me is supernatural stuff. Like, I have a background in science. Like, I have a degree in theoretical physics. I know technically ghosts didn't exist. I still believe in them.
But the movie makes you believe in it.
Yeah, it does. They're like, obviously I know it's not real, but it's so convincing that as soon as I turn the film off, I'm kind of sat there and I'm like, I feel like someone's watching me. Like, maybe I should just ring my mum really quickly, like be on the phone with her, like when I run to the bedroom, just to make sure no ghost can get me.
The worst one I remember was I watched when it first came out, the original Japanese version of The Ring.
Oh my god, the Japanese ones are terrifying. Like the Japanese Grudge. Oh, that's alive.
There were moments in there I was genuinely full of goosebumps and everything else. Yeah. And my wife one night thought it would be funny to stand at the end of the hallway in a long nightgown and brush all her hair forward. And I'm surprised I didn't die, because it was just, she knew that it scared me. I had to turn the lights on and everything else. And then she did this one night, and like I say, I genuinely thought I was going to have a heart attack because it was just so terrifying.
To be fair, I love that she did that though. I think if my boyfriend did that to me, I'd be like, yep, here's the one I'm going to marry.
Yeah, that's marriage material there.
Exactly.
Amber, thank you so much for joining us. Now, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, I think, according to the IMDb, is going to be out here in April 17th. Am I right in saying that? Do you know?
No, it's actually in UK cinemas from this Friday, the 10th of March.
Right.
And I believe it's going to be out, I think it's April the 17th, where it comes out on streaming platforms and DVD. So if there isn't a local cinema near you playing it, then that's the time where you can watch it online.
But in the meantime, like I say, yeah, we can go with our friends to the cinema and have a jolly good laugh at the Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
Exactly.
Amber, like I say, thank you so much for joining us here at the Last Movie Outpost. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure talking to you.
And we're clear.
And cut.
Yeah, no, that's from Wayne's World, because there's a scene in Wayne's World where he just goes and cut, and I always do that at the end of it. Oh, Amber, thank you so much for talking to me. Absolute pleasure.
It was lovely talking to you too, and thank you for your questions. You asked me some questions that I haven't actually been asked before, which is nice, because a lot of people tend to just ask the same ones, and then after a while, I feel like it becomes a bit robotic answering it. So thank you for the great questions.
That's all right. I just try to, like, I completely appreciate that you have to do this kind of thing all the time. And like I say, you know, that's why we appreciate taking your time out to see idiots like me. But I just try to ask something a little bit different, just like I say, to keep it a little bit fresh.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I personally really appreciate that, because I do interviews as well. And I'm the exact same. Like, I'll try and do a fun concept or a game or something just to mix it up a bit, because I think, like, it's not too bad for me. Like, I'm probably doing like maybe 3 or 4 interviews a day at the moment. But I know for these big Hollywood films, they will have like 7 or 8 hours of interviews back to back, asking the same questions, which it must be exhausting after a while. So I think it's really nice when people like us can like throw in some fun questions there, and it's just enjoyable.
Exactly. Amber, thank you so much. Like I say, we're going to, when I get a chance to see it, we're going to get a review up online. There's myself and another one of our contributors from the Last Movie Outpost who absolutely loves this kind of thing, and we're both really looking forward to seeing it. So like I say, we will get a review up, and then like I say, I'll tag you on all social media, and like I say, make sure it gets as publicized as much as we can, get a lot of people going to see it. I love the fact that this week, I think it was Cocaine Bear was coming close to beating Ant-Man in the box office takings.
Somewhere, like, they're taking over the world.
And you're thinking, really? You know, but like you say, for me, I went to see Ant-Man in the cinema, and it was just another Marvel movie, goodbye, bad guy, you know, and like I say, I'm the same as you. I want to see something new and something a bit more original. Just, you know, Scream. I'm not bothered about seeing Scream 6 because it's just Ghostface running around for 2 hours stabbing people again.
The 6th time.
Well, no, a 7th apparently, because they've got another one on the way.
Oh, why am I not surprised? I think it's going to turn into a Fast and Furious. There'll be like 27 movies in no time.
It's going to get to sort of Ghostface in space, or Ghostface versus Jason, or something or other.
Please, I really hope that they call one of the Scream films Ghostface in space. I would love that. I would actually watch that just for the lols.
To be fair, I recently watched a film I found in the 80s called Tammy and the T-Rex with Denise Richards and Paul Walker, funny enough. Well, the story is an evil scientist has created a Tyrannosaurus Rex robot, and he implants the brain of a murdered teenager in it.
That sounds so weird, but I'm totally here for it. What was it called?
I know. When I read the synopsis, and I was like, I'm up for that. Yeah. And I mean, it was one of those films that was just, it was awful, but at the same time, I was thoroughly entertained and with the characters the entire way through. And that's kind of all I want from a film at the end of the day.
This is the thing. Like, I've seen some people say this with Pooh, and some people have said in their reviews, they're like, oh, it's a bad film. But you know what? I had an amazing time, and I'd watch it again. And I'm like, what? At the end of the day, I'm like, I don't care if something's a good or a bad film. Like, if I enjoy it, that's what matters to me.
Like I said, one of the other contributors who, like I say, we've done stuff on extreme cinema and all sorts, but he's often said that the worst crime a film can commit is if you forget about it.
Yes,
and,
exactly.
You know, and like I say, with something like Pooh, Blood and Honey, I know that there's going to be stuff in there that I'm going to think about long afterwards. You know, it's not like, what was it about? It's not going to be like that. It's going to be something which is going to sit with you for a while, for the good, for the bad, whatever it is, as long as you're entertained by it.
As long as it sticks with you, then we've done our job.
Absolutely. Like I say, Amber, thank you ever so much. If you ever need anything else publicised or anything else, or you like to say you've got anything else that you want to talk to us about, please feel free to contact us. But hopefully, like I say, we'll talk to you next at another time when you've got something else cool coming out like this.
Amazing. I've got a lot of films coming out, especially horror ones. So if that's what you're into, I will just, every time one comes out, I'll be like, hey, it's me again. You're going to get fed up of me.
No, that sounds great. Like I say, it's fantastic. Like I say, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Of course. It was so lovely talking to you. Thank you again. I'm really excited to see the recording.
I will get, I'll just put it together because I don't like putting them out blank, so I'll do some editing on it at least. So give me a day or two. But yeah, as soon as I get it up, I'll send you across a copy of it.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Happy days.